Hello and welcome to B2B Revenue Leaders. I'm your host, Dustin. This podcast is brought to you by Testimonial Hero. Testimonial Hero arms you with a steady stream of customer video content that you can use throughout your entire buyer's journey. If you're interested in enabling your customers to sell for you, check out testimonialhero.com. On this episode, I'm joined by Levy, who is the head of influencer marketing and community at Demandbase. And we're going to be talking about how to build a private community that members actually come back to, how community can drive revenue, how to work with influencers as part of your community strategy, and common mistakes that companies make when trying to create a private community. I just said community a whole lot of times, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So on to the episode. Hey, Justin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining me. So we're going to be talking about a few different things, private communities, influence marketing, how it ties together. But let's start with private communities because I'm a member, like I was saying before, of probably too many and I can't keep up. And I've tried to build them before and they flopped, like they failed. It's hard. So as someone who's, built a private community, I want to start with, where do you think people go wrong? Like what are the common mistakes people usually make?
Yeah, I think that not knowing what your target audience is going to be, right? So you can always evolve that over time, but you have to know who you want that audience to be, who that almost ICP is going to be within the community, because otherwise you're going to go left and really want the right, and you're going to go down the middle. Like you're going to have too many people and then all of a sudden you'll step back and either they don't fit the kind of persona that you want to have a discussion with, or it's just not the right people. You might want B2B marketers. You might want it to be broad, but if you have the complete opposite, B2C salespeople, it's going to be too noisy and not the right people. And then no one's going to want to come into the community.
Yeah, I think the noisiness is an interesting thing because I've found, like I said, I'm a member of a bunch. The couple that I'm active in are usually a bit more niche because personally, at least when I go there, I know what I'm getting. So one of them is the LinkedIn ad group that Impactable runs. I go there when I have a LinkedIn ads question because I know they know their stuff. So I'm curious how you decided to niche down, what you ended up with, and maybe like other options you were considering.
Yeah. So when we launched Revenue Circle, we had internal conversations about how we wanted to expand it, the type of people that we wanted in it and what have you. So when we initially launched it in early 2022 or so, it was open only to CMOs and CROs. So you had to be the head of marketing or the head of sales to be part of it. After a little while, maybe 6 months or something like that, we decided to go a little broader and open it to VPs of marketing and sales and above. And now, as we speak and as we record this, we are opening it to directors and above. We'll never go below that because directors and above are decision makers, or hold budget or influence budget. But we slowly started to do that. It enabled us to understand what people wanted, understand who interacts and maybe when, time of day, week, what have you, and kind of make decisions from there on the type of content we would provide, or maybe external speakers we'd bring in, or the type of programs we would offer.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting too, starting with CMOs or CROs, because a CMO at HubSpot is very different than a CMO at 12-person startup, right?
Yes.
They have different problems, very, very different experience levels usually. So is that part of the thought process for opening up to director, that the CMOs weren't engaged, or was it too broad? Like what was the thought process there?
Yeah, it's a good question. And the CMO of HubSpot's actually a friend of mine. So it's actually interesting that you went there, but Chip's a great guy. As we first opened the doors, and it was for just those two C-suite audiences.
Yeah.
We saw that we had good engagement across the board. We had a wide variety. So you did have very early stage kind of startup CMOs, for example, and then later stage or public CMOs that had come in due to our outreach or personal relationships or what have you. So you had kind of Fortune 50 brands, and then you had, kind of to your point, like a 12-person startup or something like that. Obviously, that person is spending more time engaging because they're building out their network a little more than maybe a someone that's more established in their career or just has so much on their plate at any given time. As we've expanded it, that's certainly been one of the questions to answer is, okay, we assume that in a way directors have more time than C-suite. We assume directors have more time than VPs type thing. But also as we look to kind of future leaders now, right? Who are the CMOs and CROs have gotten to a place in their career, whether they continue that path as, through different companies as in that position, or they move on to become a CEO, a board member, startup, whatever they do, they've already ascended to those roles. So one of the things that we've made a conscious pivot towards is the future leaders. And that, like I said, is directors, that's VPs and above. And how can the community provide events and mentoring and access to each other so that everyone can learn together?
Yeah, I mean, so I used to host an HR podcast back in the day. So there was always this idea of kind of like the forgotten middle. I know director's not really middle management, but a big company kind of sort of is.
Yeah.
They get neglected a lot on training, materials, network events, because it is focused on the high level usually. So I like that approach. And you mentioned acquiring, people to join the community, which I think is one thing and probably easier than getting them to come back. So at least for my behavior personally, I would, if you DM me, I'll join. Will I come back? And we'll see. So how have you thought about that? Like getting people to actually engage and come back and get a habit essentially?
Sure. So one thing, and you said you're part of a ton of communities. So this is kind of obvious for you or something you're aware of, but most communities do like a question of the day. They try to drive engagement, right? You ask these, hopefully people are going to come in and answer them. They'll at least have some engagement with each other, whether that's sticky or not. It's kind of another part of the puzzle. And when we first launched the community, and I was looking at all these other communities that I'm a member of, whether it's actively or passively, that did question of the day, they would ask questions that were relevant to the community topic, right? So if it's sales, it would be a sales related question. If it's, one of my good friends runs the Marketing and AI Institute, and so they have a Slack community. So naturally, every day their questions tend to lean towards AI and how it's going to affect the state of business. So being kind of new to launching this community and trying to wade through it, my initial questions were around what I thought CMOs and CROs, and even then as it expanded, VPs and above would want, which were questions that tended to be a little more serious, strategy planning, org charts, budget, and things like that. And one day, a friend of mine in their channel and their Slack community asked the question along the lines of, does pineapple belong on pizza? And it does. So no one can fight me on that. But immediately it filled with responses in their network, in their channel. And kind of what the hell? We'll try this over in Revenue Circle. Next day I tried it and it immediately filled with responses. It was the most engaged post we had to that point. So as I sat back and I was trying to think through it, I thought, these executives spend all day in meetings about strategy and budget and org charts and all the stuff that they don't want to take 20 minutes out of their day and do and talk about in yet another community. So the way that I've kept the community sticky in kind of a daily engagement or a daily watering hole for the members is with more lighthearted questions of the day. So on a Friday, we might ask what someone's favorite cocktail is, or, the other day it was if a hot dog is a sandwich or not. And, I use GIFs in all these questions and cute GIFs of bunnies and squirrels and who knows what else my mind comes up with. And we measure every single one we measure. And then we know if we want to recycle them, if we should veer away. And then we'll also sprinkle in kind of topical, newsworthy questions, right? Like when work from home study comes out, or 4-day work week study comes out, or something like that. That's really engaged because a lot of people are work from home, like you and I were talking about, or have very strong opinions around return to work kind of policies that are coming out from some of the major companies now. So that was how we had it happen. It was fun. It was interesting. It's been fun. And then of course, once you get them in the community, you get that stickiness, they're more likely to stick around for some of the other stuff.
Yeah, I think so. The nurturing part is really important at the start. And I would imagine at the start, you were probably doing, like you or your team were doing a lot of the content. And then I always see this tipping point of then that person or company fades into the background and actually the community members engaging and promoting things, which as an outside observer seems to happen organically at a certain stage. It's like as kids grow up, right? They don't want to hang out with you anymore. They want to hang out with their teenage friends. I'm curious, did you take intentional steps to enable community members to do that, or like to encourage them to be active, or was it just an organic thing that you grew over time?
I think it's been a combination of both. So we are still very active, and in a way I do a lot of hand holding through it, but it's a community I enjoy being in. If it was someone else's community, I would still enjoy being part of it because I love the people that are part of it, the personalities, things of that nature. Something that we've done as well that I haven't seen in other communities, and it's just because Demandbase powers it. It's Demandbase's community, but it's, kind of we foot the bill for a lot of the stuff that we do, is that we brought in external thought leaders to create ongoing content that's community only. So we had Jay Bear come in and do a couple seasons of a show that he created just for the community. And it was a question of the week. You responded to the question. He would pick the winner and send them a bottle of tequila from his personal stash. We had Mandy McEwen come in, and she still does this, but asked the question of the week, or now we've moved it to bi-weekly, and come up with a tip of how to improve your LinkedIn profile. So helping the members to better position their personal brands and become engaged. And then do one-to-one profile reviews with them, something that she charges a lot of money for. So these were ways to get the members, not only to be helpful to them and get access to thought leaders, but help them become engaged with one another. Because say on like Mandy's threads, people would go look at each other's profiles for how they were using it, or get into a debate on, say, one of Jay's questions around sales and marketing. Yeah, I understand that, or I went to school for this, and that's why I think it gave me this perspective. Kind of ways like that. And then I think in some of the other areas, like the job boards and the events and things like that, people have organically started to promote and help each other with what they have going on, whether it's an event, a job opening, someone looking for a job, anything along those lines.
Yeah, that's something that's still, to me, especially in the more successful communities. And successful, I don't mean like volume of stuff posted. I mean volume of actual engagement, right?
Yeah.
The most successful ones I find have really helpful people, like shockingly so. You can post something and the amount of help and guidance and I'll hook you up with that person. Yeah, like that seems to be what drives it. And part of that is the selection process, but then part of it, like you said, is building that. I do want to dive into the tie between essentially influencer marketing and private community, which I think is really interesting because a lot of influencer marketing now is kind of pay to play on social networks, which is a rented channel. Whereas this is, like you said, native content built specifically for the community. So how did you decide how to do that? And then how did you decide who to work with? Because that's something I think people struggle with. There's so many tiers of influencers. Do you go big? Do you go small? Like, how did you think through that?
Yeah. So if you look at kind of my day job in lead and influence marketing, kind of separate it out from the community aspect of it. We, look at what the goals are of the campaign, whether it's product launch or demand gen or brand awareness, whatever that is. And that helps to guide the types of influencers we may want to work with, which then of course guides if it's an organic program or paid program or mix thereof, right? Because you could want to drive brand awareness to a landing page that does have a gated asset. And, how do you move them through that flow? So that's kind of one piece of the puzzle for us when we look at influencer campaigns. Another one that's been very, very wildly successful for us is lists. So for example, we just did our second annual 100 Powerful Women in Sales list. And that one post right now is one of the top 20 pages on our website this year. And we're, not too far away from Q4. So it's because we are very intentional with those lists. They are not just a list of whoever has the most followers across the internet type thing. And we spend a lot of time in how we recognize them. So those are good influencer programs for us. And then I think the third, and this kind of plays into the community piece, is direct mail campaigns. So we do a lot with using direct mail to outreach to influencers or to provide them with kind of surprises. And we weave all of that into the community. So we use direct mail within the community as kind of surprise and delight campaigns. So send in a community member that's the most engaged in the month, kind of a surprise in the mail to thank them. Or if someone is just had a new baby, so someone that I know that's a community member and also insanely popular on LinkedIn right now because of his cookies, just had a baby. So we sent him a branded onesie. So we try to do that. And some of that gets weaved into the community because when we do the list, we take nominations from the community. We have people that are members of the community that then are featured on those lists, or we go tap them for projects or things of that nature. So besides bringing in kind of the hired guns always, even though they have a lot of trust and a lot of engagement with their community, we try to shine the light on others through different activities and always create a two-way street. So outreach emails have a call to action to join the community. Like I said, we honor and celebrate people that are in our campaigns within the community so that then others are celebrating them publicly. So we try to weave those two as much as possible or kind of right for the said campaign.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about a bunch of smaller kind of magnets scattered around people to draw them in rather than one giant magnet that's going to bring everyone in. So, mega influencer versus, like you said, just everyday community member who's providing value. And there is, on the flip side of that, one thing I want to get into, because you shared a really good tip before we got on air, is on the other side of not your own private community, but being part of other communities. So I had Kathleen Booth on a while back to talk about this because she's in a bunch of communities, incredibly active, and it's hard. It has to be dedicated time, and you have to do it in an authentic way. You can never go pitch. You can't go answer questions about your company, really. And I know you've done a couple interesting approaches there. So yeah, what are some steps you take there on communities outside of yours that you want to be involved in?
Yeah. So for me personally, and this applies to both personal and work, you can surprisingly, because when I told you this off air and you hadn't seen it and I hadn't known about it, but in at least Slack-based communities, you can set up notifications and Slack provides that for you. So for those that are in Slack communities, if you go up and you click on your headshot, you click preferences, that first tab or that it's on, there's a box at the bottom that says notifications or my notifications or something. You can literally fill that with whatever terms you want it to listen to or phrases. So on the personal side, if you have hobbies or interests, or if you're into sports or what have you, and you want to listen, quote unquote, to that, you can. And Slack will alert you when those conversations are had. On the professional or work side, something that we kind of set up as a program early last year was, to your point, you can't go in and kind of talk about your company or bash your competitors or anything of that nature. So we took that alert kind of idea, that monitor, and applied it in a partnership with our customer marketing team. So my team monitors probably 25 or 30 so communities for mentions of our company, our competitors, our solutions, our products, things that might even be tied loosely to what we provide, right? So someone might not know the phrase intent data or firmographics, but they might know what they're looking for, what that actually means, right? So we'll listen to those, and when we identify threads, we'll send them to our customer marketing team, who works with our various customers who are members of those communities, and kind of activate them. And so they go in, and you have the voice of the customer now, and they'll go in and say, I evaluated Demandbase and this, and based on our evaluation and, preferences and what have you, we chose Demandbase because of these reasons. So they're not just like one-liners, like I chose Demandbase, period.
Yeah.
They're usually very thoughtful. And we've seen interestingly, I would say, is that some of these people that weren't very active before are now extremely active in these communities. So they've gone on to build their personal brands a lot more than they were when this whole program was first being set up.
Yeah, that's actually where my mind was going there. Is there's certain topics I like to talk about. You'll see on LinkedIn, like talk about social proof a lot or trust, whereas some of those communities are just too noisy, and I'm going to miss all the stuff because I don't log in for a week and it's just, flood of messages.
Yeah.
So I'm going to steal that idea just for me to be more active, to talk about stuff I'm interested in. So I'm glad we could squeeze that one in. That's a good tip. Maybe it's just me, but I had no idea that was in Slack. So for anyone else who didn't, go try it out. And Justin, thanks for joining me, talking about all this. If people want to connect with you or, join your community, learn about your community, how do they go about that?
Yeah. So you can find me at Justin Levy pretty much anywhere. For the most part, I hang out on LinkedIn these days, because Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it's a dumpster fire nowadays. So Justin Levy, LinkedIn, Instagram. And if you want to learn about the community right now, just ping me on LinkedIn if you're a director or above in sales and marketing, and I can let you in. We are working on a landing page and all that other good stuff, but putting the community first is comes ahead of kind of doing all the back end stuff right now.
For sure. Cool. So I'll include those links. So if anyone wants to reach out, they can. Again, thanks for joining me. I have a few ideas I'm going to go steal and do next week after the long weekend. So appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode. My key takeaway is just how intentional you have to be when creating a private community. It's just so easy to waste time talking about will it be on Facebook or LinkedIn or Slack or some other platform, when really that might not matter too much. What it really comes down to is a focus on niching down on the right members and then providing content that is of high enough quality to get them to actually come back. If you enjoyed this episode, hit follow or subscribe, and I'll see you next Tuesday.